I think one of the biggest things newer builders run into is that they have a really hard time breaking out of their mold of using the same blocks every time. So today, I wanted to show you guys some 1.16 block palettes. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's TrackYT here, or Nick, back with another video, guys. Today, what I wanted to do is run through a couple of block palettes for the new blocks in Minecraft 1.16. Like I said before, I think a lot of builders have a really tough time getting out of that mold of the same blocks they build with. A lot of builders, they either build in like modern, so they use a lot of quartz, or they build in medieval and they use a lot of planks and a lot of stone. So what I want to do is kind of break that mold and give you guys some ideas of blocks that you can use in Minecraft 1.16 to make some really unique builds. So our first palette is going to be using the black stone that they added in Minecraft 1.16. So I'll run through the blocks that are in this palette before I talk about it. So we have the polished blackstone, the polished basalt, we have the normal basalt, the block of netherite, the blackstone, block of coal, some dark oak planks, some stripped spruce wood, some stripped dark wood, some soul soil, some path blocks, some coarse dirt, and finally some brown concrete. So the addition of the blackstone and the basalt and the block of netherite basically in Minecraft 1.16 kind of allowed for a lot of new builds to be created. Because before this update, there wasn't really that many blocks that were very dark and black and gray and had a lot of block variants such as stairs and slabs. So the addition of all these blocks really allow you to build really cool dark themed builds. So if you'll notice by looking at my blocks, I do a very specific thing when I'm building block palettes is I like to choose two different palettes for basically the ground and then for the actual structure within the build. So you can see that kind of the build structure or the actual build itself kind of went with a more of a dark gray and a dark black theme of blocks right here. I kind of have a monochromatic going on right there. And for the ground, I kind of went with different shades of brown, and you'll kind of see if you look at all of the blocks together, you can see I kind of just used a bunch of variants of gray and black and a bunch of variants of brown, and that's kind of what made up my block palette. So if you're ever building your own block palette, I would suggest kind of going with that. Pick one color and then find blocks within the game that kind of are different shades of that specific block, and you'll find that they end up meshing really well, and it gives a really nice texture. And specific to this ground right here, you can see that the ground is basically supposed to be just dirt, but instead of just using coarse dirt, I went and I added all of these different brown blocks in there to make it a little bit more detailed and a lot more interesting overall to look at. And same thing goes with our actual structure of our build. We could have just made a really dark witch tower like we did, but instead we added a bunch of different dark blocks to really make it very texturized and very detailed, while also keeping that same theme of making it very, very dark in, I guess, witch theme. Moving on over to our next palette, I absolutely love the blocks that they're in this. So with the addition of all of the new nether biomes and nether blocks, it really allows you to kind of take some of those blocks from the nether and bring them over into the overworld and build some really cool things. So the main theme of this build is more or less themed around the actual environment and basically the biome that I created within the overworld. So let's run through the blocks that are in here. We obviously have the new blackstone, we have some cobblestone, some gravel, some stone, some new warped nylon, some stripped warped, I don't even know how to say that. We've got the mushroom stem, we've got the mushroom block, and we've got ourselves some netherrack. In a way, we basically kind of stole this biome that's in the nether and kind of brought it into the overworld with adding in our own little things like these custom mushrooms right here, and it really ends up looking really, really awesome. Like, imagine if this was a biome that was in the overworld all the time. It could almost be like themed around where witches hide. Kind of like, I kind of get that vibe when I look at this. So like, if they, instead of having the witches in the swamp biome, imagine they put it in a biome like this kind of over in the overworld. And you really can see how we use these two warped blocks right here within this build. We kind of used them because they're pretty close in color, and we used them in that same technique of kind of just adding detail with blocks that are similar colors. And then we kind of mixed in the blackstone here and there to kind of just go along with that dark mystical theme of this build. And then we trickled in this blackstone here and there to kind of go along with that dark theme of this build, the kind of mystical theme that we got going on here, especially with the nether portal in the background. It really kind of ties everything back together. And what really kind of brings this whole build together is all of the new foliage that was added with the nether update, with all these new mushrooms and these new like grass things from the nether. They all look really, really cool, and I'm pretty sure they grow naturally in the nether like this anyways, but I think when you bring them into the overworld, it kind of gives a whole new feel to it, because you got these bright sunny skies in the background and then you got this really dark and like almost mystical theme. And honestly, I think the thing that kind of ties everything in is these blue fireplaces right here, and I just think they look super cool. I just think I've been sleeping on 1.16 and the newer updates past 1.8 for so long that I'm kind of just like exploring all of these new blocks with you guys. And moving on to our last palette of the day, I really wasn't sure kind of how I wanted to use these blocks. And the blocks that I'm talking about are the crimson planks and the warped planks. They're two very, very interesting colors that are kind of hard to work with in other blocks that are currently in the game. I mean, really, the only thing I could think of was maybe adding in some of these blocks because they are similar colors over here. But honestly, what I ended up doing is instead of adding those blocks, what I stuck with was I kind of just kept them with each other. And so what I mean by that is I kind of just went with the crimson planks and I would guess the crimson stripped log. I'm going to call it a log because I, again, have no idea how to pronounce that. So the blocks that we're working with in this build are some jungle leaves, some oak wood, some grass path blocks, some soul soil, and I really like this soul soil. It's a very nice texture compared to the soul sand that's already currently in the game. Like if you compare it right now to the soul sand, it's just so much more intense, this soul sand. And I think that the soul soil really works really well, and it kind of almost reminds me of mud. And I think when you bring it over into the overworld, it works really well with all the other brown dirts and stuff like that in the game. And then again, we have coarse dirt, we have some spruce planks, some oak planks, we have again the crimson planks and the crimson stripped logs, and then we have the gravel, we have the cobblestone, we have some mossy cobble, and finally we have some blackstone. So when we're actually looking at this build, I guess you would consider it like a Hobbit themed build, and what I really wanted to do is mix in all of these blocks to really create a really nice swamp themed build. It almost kind of reminds me of like a Shrek build in a way, because we've got all these different browns and greens and like, I guess, wilderness themed blocks going on in the actual, I guess, environment around the actual build. I think it really works really well together because we made it super overgrown. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but I think it works really well together. And then again, we kind of have that same theme where we have a separate block palette for our environment versus our build. So in the actual build itself, you can see we kind of stuck with more or less planks and woods and stuff like that within the build, and we tried to kind of keep a separate between the purple and the brown. I think it's very hard to mix in the purple naturally within other blocks, so we kind of used the spruce planks to kind of outline that to kind of give it a really nice border and separate it from the other blocks within the build. But I think when it comes down to it, when you're going to be using this nylelium warped planks and the crimson planks, I think what it's going to happen is you're going to end up using them as like focal blocks or like main stage blocks. Like for example, the warped crimson block right here is more or less the overall focal point within this, because all of the other blocks kind of blend together, and then you have a very intense like purple right in the middle. So I think it's going to be really hard to mix that in as a natural block within other builds. I think it's always going to remain more or less as a focal point in most builds. But we'll just go back and we'll look at the builds that we created with the new blocks. You can see again, like I said before, the crimson block is a new block, the blackstone's a new block, the soul sand is a new block, and then if we move over to here, we can see that the nylelium, or however you say that, the warped nylelium and the warped, again, I don't even know how you say that, those are new blocks, as well as again the blackstone. We tried to mix in as many new blocks in these block palettes as we could, because I think it's 1.16 and a lot of people are just starting to play it, and I think this gives you guys a head start into new builds that you can kind of explore. And then lastly, moving back over here, the new blocks in here are all of the blackstone in the basalt variants right here, and then again the soul sand on the side over here are the new blocks in this build. But guys, that's where we're gonna bring today's video to a wrap. I hope this guys give you some inspiration on some blocks that you can now use within Minecraft 1.16. I'm definitely gonna myself being exploring some of the new blocks a little bit more and trying to see what do they work well with and what do they not, and try to get some really creative block palettes, and maybe I'll make another episode of this if you guys want me to. But if you guys did enjoy today's video, definitely show your support down below, and while you guys are down there, might as well hit that subscribe button. But as always guys, I love you all. See you guys next time. Peace out.